Call a taxi, Dad. 4 words typed on a screen that cut deeper than the surgeon's scalpel ever could. They thought I was just a frail old man shuffling in their way. They were about to discover that this old carpenter still knew how to tear things down. The beep of the heart monitor was my only companion. Steady, mechanical, indifferent. It didn't care about the heavy, unfamiliar ache in my chest. I'm Arthur Harrison. I'm 68 years old, and I had just survived a triple bypass. Dr. Evans, my surgeon, used the word lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt like an old pane of glass, fragile, thin, one careless touch away from shattering completely. The sterile smell of the hospital room was a smell of sickness, of endings, and I wasn't ready for endings. For 40 years I was a carpenter. I built things, houses, furniture, a life. I used my hands. They were strong and calloused, hands that knew the grain of oak and the bite of steel. Now they trembled just holding a plastic cup. The skin felt thin, like paper. I built a sturdy, comfortable home for my wife Margaret and our son David. It was a good home, filled with laughter and the smell of sawdust and Margaret's baking, but cancer took Margaret 5 years ago. The silence she left behind was heavier than any beam I ever lifted. The house felt too big. Every room echoed with her absence. I was drowning in the quiet. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone, because when David lost his job and he and his wife Chloe needed a place to regroup, I readily agreed. I needed the noise. I needed the movement. I needed family. Or so I thought. I didn't realize I was inviting termites into my foundation. At first it was a comfort. The simple presence of other people filled the empty spaces. But slowly the atmosphere shifted. It started with my tools, the companions of my life's work. They were pushed to the very back of the garage. David needed the space for his expensive sports car, a bright red monument to his vanity, a car he bought with money I loaned him, money that never came back. I told myself it didn't matter, but it did. Then Margaret's favorite reading chair vanished, the one she always sat in by the window. Chloe said it was tacky. It didn't match the modern, sterile furniture she started buying. Cold glass tables and uncomfortable sofas. I wasn't the homeowner anymore. I was the resident ghost, haunting the halls of a life that used to be mine. And the realization was a slow poison, seeping into my bones. Lying in the hospital bed, I felt that isolation more acutely than ever. 8 days I was hospitalized. 8 days of uncertainty, pain, and fear. David and Chloe hadn't visited me once. Not once. They called twice. Brief conversations filled with hollow excuses. Traffic. David's supposed job interviews. Chloe's sudden migraines. I knew they were lies, but admitting it meant admitting how little I mattered to them. Dr. Evans came in during his morning rounds, his face overly cheerful. "Well, Arthur, the tests look good. Vitals are strong. We're sending you home today." "That's good," I managed, my voice raspy from the intubation tube. "It is, but the next few weeks are critical," he warned, checking my chart. "No heavy lifting, no stairs, and absolutely no stress. Your heart needs rest. Your son and daughter-in-law are ready to help you, right? You need assistance with everything." "Yes, they know," I said. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. They knew, they just didn't care. After he left, I reached for my phone. My hands trembled. I opened the family chat. A cruel joke of a name. I took a deep breath, the simple action pulling painfully at the sutures in my chest, and typed, "Doctor is discharging me today around noon. Who can pick me up from the hospital?" I hit send. I waited. The icon showed the message was read immediately. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the relentless beep of the monitor. Minutes ticked by. 5, 10. The silence grew louder, colder. Finally, David replied. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was loud and clear. I stared at the screen. The typing bubble appeared. My heart pounded, a painful rhythm against my broken ribs. This was it. A simple request. A basic human kindness. The message popped up. "Noon, the game is on. Call a taxi, Dad." The words hit me like a physical blow. Colder than the surgeon's scalpel. He was sitting on my couch, in the house I built, watching my television, and he couldn't pause a basketball game. The casual indifference was staggering. My own son. But the worst was yet to come. Before I could even process the pain, Chloe's message appeared beneath his stain. This one was worse. This one was meant to hurt. Another bubble. This one felt sharper even before I read it. Chloe never wasted an opportunity to twist the knife. Honestly, stay in the hospital for another month. It's so nice and quiet here without you shuffling around. She added a laughing emoji, a little yellow face mocking my pain. I closed my eyes. The tears came hot and fast, blurring the screen. It wasn't just the neglect, it was the deliberate cruelty. I was a burden, an inconvenience, an old man interrupting their comfortable life, a life I was funding. They didn't just forget me. They despised me. I was so lost in the pain that I didn't notice my neighbor Frank enter the room until he put a hand on my shoulder. Frank lived next door for 30 years, a retired plumber, a man as solid and dependable as the pipes he used to fix. We had raised our kids together. We had mourned our wives together. "Arthur, you look like you've seen a ghost," he said, his voice gruff but kind. He held up a thermos. "Brought you some real coffee. Hospital stuff tastes like mud." I quickly wiped my eyes, trying to hide the phone screen. I was ashamed of my own family. "Frank, what are you doing here?" "Came to check on you. David mentioned you were doing fine, but I know how he exaggerates. You look terrible. I'm being discharged today," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "That's great. I'll wait with you until David gets here. Traffic's bad." I looked away. The shame washed over me like a cold wave. I couldn't lie to Frank. "He's not coming, Frank. They told me to take a taxi." Frank stared at me. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, and finally to cold fury. "A taxi? After heart surgery? What in the world is wrong with those two? Are they insane?" I just shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "Well, that settles it," Frank said decisively. "You're not taking a taxi. I'm driving you home, and I'm going to give that boy a piece of my mind." I knew then that the ride home would be anything but peaceful. Frank helped me get dressed. The simple act of putting on a shirt was exhausting. Every movement sent waves of pain through my torso. He walked me down to his truck, steadying me when I wobbled. The ride home was quiet. The silence in the truck only amplified the roar of rejection in my head. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw it. David's sports car, gleaming in the midday sun. He was home. He had been home the whole time. The realization twisted the knife in my chest. Frank's jaw tightened. "Wait here, I'll help you out." He marched up to the front door and banged on the door, loud enough to wake the dead. Finally, the door yanked open. It was Chloe, wearing expensive silk pajamas. She looked deeply annoyed. "Frank, what do you want? We're busy." "I brought Arthur home," Frank spat out, his voice dripping with contempt. Chloe peered past him to the truck. Her expression didn't change. No relief, no concern. "Oh, he actually came back." She didn't move to help. She just stood there, blocking the entrance. Like I was a stray dog she didn't want on her porch. Frank looked like he was about to explode. He gently guided me out of the truck and up the steps. Chloe reluctantly stepped aside, wrinkling her nose as I passed, a small gesture of disgust. "You smell like a hospital," she said. My own home, and I was unwelcome. The pain in my chest intensified. But this pain wasn't from the surgery. We walked into the living room. The stench of stale beer and old food hit me like a wall. The room was a disaster. Empty pizza boxes and wrappers littered the coffee table. It looked like a dump, not the home Margaret and I had built. David was slouched on the sofa, eyes glued to the giant TV, the one I had bought last year. He didn't look up. "Hey," he mumbled, raising a hand in a half-hearted wave. Games in overtime. He couldn't even bother to look at me. His father, fresh from the hospital. Frank guided me to the armchair, the only piece of furniture that still felt like mine. "Is that all you have to say?" Frank demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Your father just had his chest cracked open, you worthless David sighed dramatically and paused the game. The sudden silence was jarring. He turned to Frank, his expression bored. "Relax, Frank. He's fine. He's here, isn't he? Stop making a big deal out of nothing." He looked at me, then back at Frank. "You're interfering with my day. Interfering with his day. My life was just an interruption." "You're a disgrace, David," Frank said, his voice low and dangerous. "Frank, stay out of our business," Chloe snapped, appearing behind David. "We don't need your judgment. If Arthur needs a babysitter, maybe he should hire one. We have our own lives." They were defending their cruelty, as if it were their right. I felt a wave of dizziness. The room spun slightly. The stress Dr. Evans warned me about was crashing down on me. "Frank, It's okay, I whispered. My voice was weak. Just let it go, please. I couldn't handle the confrontation. Not yet. Frank hesitated. He looked from my pale face to their defiant expressions. He nodded grimly. I'll check on you later, Arthur. Anything at all. He glared at David one last time and left, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the silent house. The silence that followed was thick with resentment. Drama queen, Chloe muttered, picking up her magazine. David pressed play on the game. He turned the volume up, louder than before, effectively erasing me from the room, erasing me from his life. I sat there, invisible in my own home. I needed to take my medication. The pills were in my pocket, but I didn't have the strength to get up and get a glass of water. The thought of asking them was unbearable, but I had to. My chest was throbbing. The pills felt heavy in my pocket. My throat was dry. I looked at David. He was completely absorbed in the game, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. David, I asked, my voice weak, could you please get me a glass of water? I need to take my pills. He ignored me. He shouted at the TV as a player missed a shot. Are you kidding me? He yelled, throwing his hands up in frustration. He didn't even flinch. The realization hit me sharp and cold. If I collapsed right now, if my heart stopped beating right here on this chair, they might not even notice until the next commercial break. My life held less value than a televised game. This wasn't just neglect. This was dangerous. I struggled to my feet. The effort sent a searing pain through my chest. I gasped, leaning heavily on the armchair for support. I shuffled to the kitchen, clinging to the walls. Every step was agony. But I had to keep moving. I had to survive. The kitchen was disgusting. Dirty dishes piled high in the sink, attracting flies. The counters were sticky with spilled food. Margaret used to keep this kitchen immaculate. The memory of her smiling face twisted in my heart. They had desecrated her memory. I opened the refrigerator. Nearly empty. Expired milk, wilted vegetables, and several bottles of Chloe's expensive imported sparkling water. They hadn't bothered to buy groceries. They knew I was coming home. They just didn't care if I ate. I managed to find a relatively clean glass and filled it with tap water. I swallowed my pills, the bitterness lingering on my tongue. It wasn't the medicine. It was the betrayal. I looked around the kitchen, the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. How did it come to this? The next few days were a slow descent into hell. I was confined to the living room, sleeping on the armchair because the stairs were too daunting. My back ached. My legs swelled. They refused to help me up. David and Chloe treated me like unwanted furniture, an obstacle. They ordered elaborate takeout meals, sushi, steak, Italian. The aromas filled the room, torturing me. They ate them in front of me, never once offering me a bite. Oh, this steak is divine, Chloe would moan, savoring every mouthful. Too bad it's too rich for your stomach, Arthur. I ate the canned soup I found in the pantry, cold. They were starving me in my own home. Frank was my only lifeline. He came over twice a day. He brought me nourishing food his sister cooked. He helped me wash up. He checked my bandages with a gentle hand. He did the job my son should have been doing, showing the love my family refused to give. On the third day, something happened that shifted my fear into something colder. My phone rang. It was the hospital. I answered it, my heart skipping a beat. Mr. Harrison, this is Nurse Davis. I cared for you on the cardiac floor. She sounded hesitant. I remembered her, young, maybe 25, always kind, always fiddling with her ID badge when she was nervous. Yes, Nurse Davis, is everything all right? Are the tests okay? Oh yes, the tests are fine, she said quickly. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm not supposed to call. I could get in trouble, but I felt you should know. Your daughter-in-law, Chloe? She came by yesterday. I frowned. She came to the hospital? Why? I was already discharged. That's the thing, Nurse Davis said. She wasn't looking for you. She was asking about your prognosis, but not the way you'd expect. She paused, taking a shaky breath. She was asking about your mental state, Mr. Harrison. My mental state? I asked, confused. She was asking if you showed signs of confusion. Memory loss? Dementia? Nurse Davis rushed the words out. She even tried to access your medical records unauthorized. She claimed she had power of attorney. We stopped her, of course. But, Mr. Harrison, it felt wrong. I wanted to warn you. My blood ran cold. Dementia, power of attorney. Why would she lie? It didn't make sense. Unless they were planning something. Something dark. The fear I felt wasn't just about neglect anymore. It felt like danger. Real danger. "Thank you, Nurse Davis," I said, my voice trembling. "Thank you for telling me." I hung up. The pieces started clicking into place. The neglect, the isolation, the financial demands. They weren't just lazy or selfish. They were calculating. They were building a case against me. But why were they so desperate? I was about to find out. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. David groaned from the couch. "Get that, Chloe. I'm busy." I heard the door open. Then angry voices. A woman's voice I didn't recognize. Sharp and demanding. It was a voice used to getting what it wanted. "Where is he? I know he's here. Don't lie to me, Chloe." Chloe tried to shush her. "Keep your voice down, Sarah. He's resting. We talked about this. We talked about payment. Not excuses," the voice snapped back. A woman stormed into the living room. She was tall, maybe in her late 30s, wearing too much makeup and tapping her nails impatiently on an expensive purse. This was Sarah. She looked dangerous. She locked eyes with David. David scrambled off the couch, his face pale. He suddenly looked like a scared little boy. "Sarah, I told you I need more time. Things are complicated right now." "Time's up, David," Sarah snapped. Her voice cut through the room like a knife. "You owe me $15,000. The interest is piling up. I'm tired of your excuses. I'm tired of your lies." $15,000? I stared at David. What had he done? "The bets didn't pay off," David mumbled, looking at the floor. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'll get it. I just need a few more days. My dad, your dad." Sarah laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You think I don't know you used the money he gave you for the car to pay off the last guy? And then gambled away the loan I gave you? You're pathetic, David. A loser, trying to play in the big leagues. Gambling." The realization hit me hard. The money I loaned him, the missing funds from my bank account, the constant need for more. It wasn't just Chloe's shopping. David was gambling it all away. That's why they were so desperate. That's why they were willing to do anything to get their hands on my assets. "Get out of my house," Chloe hissed at Sarah, trying to look brave. "This isn't your house, honey," Sarah sneered. She looked at me, sitting in the armchair. A flicker of pity crossed her face. "They're bleeding you dry, old man. Watch your back. They're drowning, and they'll pull you down with them." She turned back to David. "Friday, 15,000. Or I take the car. And I won't be so nice next time. I might have to talk to that shady lawyer you use, Henderson, about that little investment scheme you were running. Henderson." I filed the name away. She stormed out. The silence that followed was deafening. David and Chloe didn't look at me. They just stood there, the truth exposed. They weren't just selfish. They were thieves. They were criminals. And I was trapped with them. Later that day, despite the confrontation, despite their debts, Chloe got dressed up again, ready to go out. The denial was staggering. "I'm going out," she announced. "I need money." "I don't have any cash, Chloe," I said, keeping my voice even. "I know that. I need your debit card." I thought about the gambling, the missing money, the lies, the audacity of her demand. My patience finally snapped. "Chloe, I need that card," I said, my voice low. "I have medical bills, and apparently you and David have debts to pay. Debts you can't cover." She put her hands on her hips. Her eyes were cold, furious that I knew the truth. "Are you seriously denying me money, after everything I do for you? And how dare you bring up our private business?" "What exactly do you do for me, Chloe?" I asked quietly, meeting her gaze. "I let you live here," she shrieked, losing control. "I put up with your presence. You are so ungrateful, Arthur. You're a selfish old man who deserves nothing." She was twisting the reality of who was supporting whom. I chose to fight. I had to. "No," I said. My voice was surprisingly firm, stronger than it had been in weeks. "You will not take my card, and you will not take anything else from me." She stared at me, stunned. She scoffed, trying to regain her composure. "Fine, be selfish, but don't expect me to cook for you anymore. You can starve for all I care. Maybe that will solve all our problems." She stormed out. The door slammed. I knew I had made my life harder, but I felt a small spark of defiance. I was not completely helpless. Not yet, but they were desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. A few hours later, the doorbell rang again. I heard Chloe answer it. This time, the voice was calm, professional. "Mrs. Harrison? I'm Mrs. Gable." I'm a social worker with Adult Protective Services. My heart leaped into my throat. A social worker? Chloe's voice was suddenly sweet, dripping with fake concern. Oh, thank goodness you're here. We've been so worried about Arthur. His mind, it's slipping. Please, come in. They were doing it. They were already setting the stage, using the system against me. Mrs. Gable walked into the living room. She was middle-aged, with kind eyes but a stern expression. She looked around the messy room, her nose wrinkling slightly. She looked at me, frail and small, in the armchair. "Mr. Harrison, how are you feeling?" she asked me, her voice gentle. Before I could answer, Chloe jumped in. "He gets confused, Mrs. Gable. He forgets to eat. He refused to give me his bank card earlier, accusing me of stealing. We're just trying to help him manage his finances. It's becoming too much for us." I stared at her, speechless at the blatant lies. "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "She's lying." David stepped forward, putting a comforting hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Dad, don't get agitated. Mrs. Gable is here to help. We know you're confused. It's okay." He looked at me with pity. It was an act, a performance for the social worker, and it was terrifyingly convincing. Mrs. Gable held up a hand. "I need to speak with Mr. Harrison alone." Chloe hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Of course, but be careful. He can get aggressive when he's like this." They left the room. Mrs. Gable sat down on the couch, her gaze fixed on me. "Mr. Harrison, we received a report, concerns about your discharge plan and your family's ability to care for you, and concerns about your mental state." I realized then that Nurse Davis's warning was coming true. They were using the hospital records, twisting them. "They're lying," I whispered. "They want my house. They want my money. They're trying to make me look crazy." Mrs. Gable nodded slowly, taking notes. "I understand you feel that way, Mr. Harrison, but we need to ensure you are in a safe environment. We will be conducting a full evaluation. If your care doesn't improve, or if we determine you are unable to make decisions for yourself, we may need to consider alternative living arrangements." Assisted living. The words hung in the air. The threat was real, and they were winning. Later that evening, I heard them. They were talking in the kitchen. They thought I was asleep. Their voices were loud, fueled by anger and fear after the social worker left. "That social worker spooked me," David said, his voice slurring. "She didn't entirely believe us. We need to accelerate the plan." "I agree," Chloe hissed. "He's getting stubborn. He knows about the gambling. We need control. Now, we need him to sign the house over to us," David said. "We can sell this dump and move to California. Start over." "He'll never agree to that," Chloe said. "It's his precious house. Mom's memory and all that garbage." Garbage. That's what my life, my love, my memories were to my own son. My heart broke all over again. "Then we force it," David said, his voice low and cold. "I talked to Henderson again. That lawyer Sarah mentioned. He said if we can get power of attorney, we control everything. We just need proof he's incompetent." "We use the social worker's evaluation," Chloe whispered. "He's already confused. We make sure he seems confused when she comes back. Maybe mix up his medication a little. Just enough to make him seem incompetent. Then we get the power of attorney. We put him in a home, and we take the assets. Mix up my medication. They weren't just planning to steal my house. They were planning to steal my mind. Or worse, it wasn't just neglect anymore. It was a calculated attack on my life, my freedom, my sanity." The realization sparked a primal fear. I had to protect myself. I had to get out. But how? I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, dread settling over me like a shroud. I had very little money left, no strength, no family I could trust. I was trapped in a house I built, with people who wanted me gone. If this story is resonating with you, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. It helps our channel grow and bring more stories like this to light. Because sometimes, when you're trapped in the dark, you remember where you hid the light. I thought about my secret. The one thing that kept me going after Margaret died. The one thing they hadn't managed to take from me. My sanctuary. The one place where I was still Arthur Harrison, the builder. 3 years ago, the old city library downtown was condemned. A magnificent building, built in the early 1900s. Grand arches, intricate stonework, magnificent oak interiors. The city council voted to demolish it, to build a parking lot. It felt like a crime against history. I couldn't let that happen. So I bought it, for a ridiculously low price, using the last of Margaret's life insurance money. Everyone thought I was crazy. David and Chloe were furious. They called it Dad's folly, a money pit, a foolish waste of resources they felt entitled to. They saw a ruin. I saw potential. I spent every day there, painstakingly restoring it. A labor of love. I repaired the roof, reinforced the foundation, recreated the damaged moldings, polished the old wood floors until they shone like mirrors. It was my connection to the past, my way of staying alive. I hadn't been there in weeks, not since before the surgery. The thought of the quiet solitude, the smell of old wood and linseed oil, filled me with a desperate longing. I needed to go there. I needed to remind myself that I was still capable of creating beauty. The next morning, I woke up with a surge of determination. I waited until David and Chloe left. They were going to meet Henderson, the lawyer. I heard them discussing the plan. I called Frank. "Frank, I need you to drive me somewhere." "Where?" "The old library." Frank hesitated. "Arthur, are you sure? You're still weak?" "I need to see it, Frank. Please, it's important." He understood. He always did. He drove me downtown. When we pulled up in front of the library, I felt a lump in my throat. It looked magnificent. The morning sun reflecting off the restored stonework, the copper gutters gleaming. It was breathtaking. It was mine. Frank helped me inside. The air was still, the silence profound. Sunlight streamed through the grand arched windows. Dust motes danced in the air. It was beautiful. It felt like coming home. "You did an amazing job, Arthur," Frank said, whistling softly. He looked around the grand reading room, his eyes wide with appreciation. "It looks brand new. Better than new." "It's almost finished," I said. I ran my hand over the smooth, polished wood of the circulation desk. I built it by hand. Just a few more details. We spent an hour there. I walked slowly through the rooms, checking the progress, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I felt my strength returning. I was still Arthur Harrison, the carpenter, and I wasn't done building yet. As we were leaving, a large black car pulled up, sleek and expensive. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, leather briefcase in hand. He looked surprised to see us. "Excuse me," he said, adjusting his tie. He had a professional, polished look. "Is the owner here? Mr. Arthur Harrison?" "I'm Arthur Harrison," I said, wary. I was always worried about city inspectors, someone trying to stop my work. The man's face lit up. "Mr. Harrison, what a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm James Anderson. I represent the National Historical Preservation Society." I frowned. "The Historical Society? What do you want?" "I have all the necessary permits. I wasn't going to let anyone take this away from me. Not now." "I'm not here about permits," Anderson said, smiling warmly. "I'm here to talk about this building." He gestured towards the library. "We've been following your restoration work. It's extraordinary, truly remarkable craftsmanship." I didn't know what to say. I had been working in isolation, assuming I was invisible. "We had a team of experts inspect the building last week," Anderson continued. "While you were hospitalized, they were blown away. The quality of the work, the attention to detail, the historical accuracy. You have preserved a masterpiece, Mr. Harrison." "You inspected it? Without my permission?" I asked, annoyed. A surge of possessiveness washed over me. My sanctuary? My secret project? Even this was being scrutinized without my knowledge. I felt a sudden fear that this man might try to take it away, just like David and Chloe were trying to take my house. "We apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Harrison," Anderson said smoothly. "But we had to verify the rumors, and I'm glad we did. Mr. Harrison, this building is a national treasure, and you saved it." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. I waited for the catch. There was always a catch. "The reason I'm here," he continued, "is to inform you that the National Historical Preservation Society has selected you as the recipient of this year's Golden Hammer Award. It's the highest honor we bestow." I stared at him, speechless. The Golden Hammer Award. I had read about it in carpentry magazines for decades. It was prestigious, usually given to large corporations, not a retired carpenter working alone in a dusty old building. "But that's not all," Anderson said. His smile widened. "The award comes with a substantial cash prize, and more importantly, the City Council, inspired by your work and the national recognition, has voted to buy the building back from you." "Buy it back?" I asked, confused. "I never intended to sell it. It was my legacy." "Yes, they realize their mistake. They want to turn it back into a public library, a centerpiece of the city's cultural revival. They are prepared to offer you a very generous sum to acquire it." He opened his briefcase, pulled out a thick document. He handed it to me. I looked at the numbers, and then I looked again. My eyes must be deceiving me. The shock was intense. I couldn't breathe. The cash prize for the award was $500,000. The offer from the city council for the library was $8 million. $8.5 million. I gasped. The air rushed out of my lungs. It felt like another heart attack. I leaned against the wall. My knees buckled. Frank grabbed my arm, steadying me. "Arthur, are you okay?" "Are you captable?" Air rushed out of my lungs. It felt like another heart attack. I leaned against the wall. My knees buckled. Frank grabbed my arm, steadying me. "Arthur, are you okay?" "Breathe, Arthur," he urged, his face etched with concern. I'm fine," I whispered. Tears filled my eyes. It was too much to process. The man considered a burden, a nuisance. A fool wasting money on a dilapidated building was suddenly a millionaire. A hero. The irony was almost too much to bear. "Mr. Harrison," Anderson said, his voice gentle, "I know this is a lot to take in, but we need your signature. The mayor is eager to announce the news. They've scheduled a press conference for this evening. It's a big deal for the city." A press conference. Tonight. The thought terrified me. I was a private man. The magnitude of the situation was overwhelming. A life-altering decision while still recovering, still reeling from my family's betrayal. It was a terrifying leap into the unknown. But I knew what Margaret would want me to do. "Fine," I agreed. My voice trembled, but my resolve was firm. "Where do I sign?" I signed the documents. My hand shaking, but my signature was clear. "Arthur Harrison." "Congratulations, Mr. Harrison," Anderson said, shaking my hand vigorously. "You deserve this. Your work is an inspiration to us all." He left. Frank and I sat in the silence of the library, sunlight washing over us. $8.5 million, Frank whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. "Margaret would be so proud, Arthur. So incredibly proud." "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I finally did it, Frank," whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. "Margaret would be so proud, Arthur. So incredibly proud." "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I finally did it, Frank. I built something that matters, and it was going to save me." Frank drove me back home. The house felt different now. Smaller, colder. It was no longer my sanctuary. It was a prison I was about to escape. David and Chloe were in the living room. They had just returned from the lawyer's office. They looked smug, confident. "Where were you?" David demanded. "Annoyed. We were busy finalizing the paperwork with Henderson. We need your signature on the power of attorney." They were moving fast. They thought they had won. I was busy too, I said. A small smile played on my lips. "Busy doing what?" Chloe scoffed. "Wasting more time at that old dump?" "Sign the papers, Arthur." "It's for your own good." I didn't answer. I just looked at them, seeing them clearly for the first time. Greedy, selfish, empty shells. They were already dead inside. "I need to rest," I said. "I have a busy evening ahead of me, and I won't be signing anything." I went to my room. Frank helped me up the stairs. The first time in my bedroom since the surgery, it felt good to be back in my own space. However briefly, I changed into my best suit, the one I wore to Margaret's funeral. A little loose, but it still fit. Frank stayed with me, helping with the tie, polishing my shoes, the brother I never had, the son I wished I had. The weight of the impending confrontation settled in my stomach. A knot of anxiety tightened. Tonight, everything would change. I had to face my family. The world, my new life. It was terrifying, but necessary. Freedom and justice were waiting, and I was ready. At 6 p.m., limousine arrived, arranged by the mayor's office. I walked out of the house. David and Chloe stared after me, confused, suspicious, resentful of the attention. They had no idea their world was about to crumble. I didn't look back. The press conference was at City Hall, the room packed with reporters, cameras flashing. The mayor greeted me warmly, shaking my hand, calling me a hero, a visionary, the savior of the city's heritage. It felt surreal. I stood on the podium, the bright lights blinding me. I felt frail and tired, but I stood tall. I talked about the library, the importance of preserving history, the beauty of craftsmanship. I dedicated the award and the restoration to Margaret. My voice, weak at first, gained strength as I spoke, filled with the passion I had hidden for so long. Meanwhile, back at the house, David and Chloe were finishing dinner. Frozen pizza. The television was on in the background. Tuned to the local lights, they were complaining about me. As usual, he thinks he's so smart, refusing to sign the papers. Chloe sneered, biting into a slice of greasy pizza. But he's just a foolish old man. We'll get the social worker to force it. I know, David agreed. Once we have control of the house, we'll pay Sarah off and finally be free of him. They lapsed into a sullen silence. The news anchor's cheerful voice filled the room. And now for our top story tonight. A local hero saves history and revitalizes our city. Arthur Harrison, a 68-year-old retired carpenter, has stunned the city with his extraordinary restoration of the old downtown library. David and Chloe froze. They looked up at the TV, their eyes wide, in disbelief. The color drained from their faces. On the screen was standing next to the mayor, holding the Golden Hammer Award. The caption beneath read, Arthur Harrison, local hero awarded $8.5 million for library restoration. David dropped his pizza. It landed face down on the carpet. He didn't notice. Chloe gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and raw, naked greed. $8.5 million? That old dump? How is that possible? They stared at the screen, watching me talk about my passion, my legacy. They saw the respect in the mayor's eyes. They heard the applause. This wasn't the burdensome old man who shuffled around the house. This was a millionaire, a celebrity, a man of value. And they had thrown him away. David, Chloe hissed, grabbing his arm, her nails digging into his skin. Call him now. We need to fix this. David fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so much he could barely dial. He dialed my number. I was in the limousine, driving away from City Hall, the exhaustion finally catching up. But it was a good exhaustion. The exhaustion of victory. My phone buzzed in my pocket. David's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it. It rang again, and again, and again. The messages poured in, a frantic stream of desperation. Dad, we saw the news. Congratulations. We are so proud of you. Arthur, this is amazing. Come home. We're ordering champagne. We love you. Dad, pick up the phone. We need to talk about the money. We have ideas. We can help you manage it. I looked at the call log. 67 missed calls. All within an hour. They were relentless. The scent of money had drawn them out, like sharks to blood. But it was too late. Their true colors had been exposed. The greed, the cruelty, the betrayal. I could never unsee them. I asked the driver to take me to the best hotel in the city. I checked into the presidential suite. It was quiet, peaceful. The view of the city skyline, including the illuminated dome of the library, was breathtaking. I called Frank. It's done, Frank. I saw it. Arthur, you were magnificent. A true inspiration. Can you do me a favor? I asked. I need you to go to the house. Make sure they don't steal anything. I'll be there tomorrow morning, with a lawyer and the police. I'm already there, Frank said, steady and reassuring. Don't you worry about a thing. I got your back. I hung up. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. A profound sense of peace settled over me. The weight I had been carrying, the grief, the betrayal, the fear, lifted. I was free. The next morning, I arrived at the house with my lawyer, Mr. Davis, and 2 police officers. Mr. Davis was sharp, efficient, and strictly business. The house was quiet, eerily quiet. David and Chloe were in the living room, surrounded by hastily packed suitcases. Their faces pale, eyes red and swollen from crying. They looked broken, defeated. The fight had gone out of them. They rushed towards me as I entered, a picture of remorse and desperation. Dad, please, we're so sorry, David begged, tears streaming down his face. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. The police officers flanked me, a silent barrier. "We didn't mean it," he sobbed. "We were just stressed about money. The gambling, the debts. We were wrong. So wrong. We love you, Arthur," Chloe cried, her voice trembling. She reached out to touch my arm, but the officer blocked her. "We'll change. We promise. We'll take care of you. Just don't leave us." I looked at them. The memory of their cruelty, their indifference, their greed. I remembered the call a taxi. I remembered the plot to institutionalize me, to drug me. "I know you're sorry," I said quietly, my voice steady, calm, devoid of emotion, but it's too late. Mr. Davis stepped forward. He handed them an envelope. "This is an eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Mr. Harrison has also filed a restraining order against both of you. Any attempt to contact him will result in immediate arrest." They stared at the envelope, stunned into silence, the finality of it hitting them. "Furthermore," Mr. Davis continued, his voice professional and cold, "we will be auditing his accounts. Any misappropriated funds will be pursued legally. And we have informed Adult Protective Services of the fraudulent claims made against Mr. Harrison. A restraining order." "Dad, how can you do this to us? We're your family," David whispered, his voice broken, the reality finally sinking in. He had lost everything. "Family?" I said, the word laced with a bitterness I didn't know I possessed. Family doesn't abandon their father after heart surgery. Family doesn't plot to institutionalize him and steal his home. I looked my son straight in the eye, for the very last time. "You are not my family. You are my biggest mistake." I turned around and walked away, leaving them standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of the life they destroyed through their own greed and cruelty. I walked out the door and didn't look back. I sold the house a few weeks later. I didn't want the memories anymore. They were tainted. I donated the furniture to charity. I moved into a small, comfortable apartment near the library, a place filled with sunlight, books, and peace. I used the money to set up a foundation, the Margaret Harrison Foundation, dedicated to preserving historical buildings, teaching young people the art of carpentry and craftsmanship. I hired Frank as the project manager, paid him generously. He deserved it. I never saw Adid or Chloe again. I heard through the grapevine that they moved to another state, struggling to make ends meet, bouncing from one failed scheme to another, still owing money to Sarah. They eventually divorced, blaming each other for their misfortune. Some people never learn. I am 70 now. My heart, though scarred, is strong. I spend my days working at the library, mentoring young apprentices, surrounded by the beauty I helped create. I found my purpose. I found my peace. Sometimes I sit in the quiet solitude of the grand reading room, the sunlight warming my face. I think about Margaret, the life we built, the love we shared, the legacy we left behind. I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, kindness, being there when it matters the most. Frank is my family. My apprentices are my family. I finally understood that the most valuable things in life are not the ones we own, but the ones we build. Thanks for listening. Please rate this story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.